Danny Koker didn't just build cars, he built a family. A brotherhood forged in grease, steel, and late-night miracles inside the walls of Count's Customs. For years, loyalty was the engine that kept his empire running. Every car restored, every deal sealed, every mile driven forward was powered by trust. But trust is fragile, and inside Danny's shop, it didn't break overnight. Cracked slowly, quietly, like metal under pressure. As the cameras rolled and the fans watched the magic unfold, something far different was happening behind the scenes. Hidden feuds, growing egos, money disputes, and decisions that blindsided the very man who created the empire. What started as a tight-knit family began to unravel, piece by piece, until Danny finally saw the truth he never wanted to admit. Some crew members weren't loyal, some weren't honest, and some were never who they pretended to be. Today, for the first time, Danny Koker is done staying silent. He is finally revealing the names of the 5 worst employees who nearly tore the entire Counting Cars legacy apart, and why he'll never forgive them. When Danny finally opened up about the people who had crossed the line, suddenly his silence over the years began to make perfect sense. The truth wasn't loud, it wasn't explosive, it was quieter, colder, like a wound that never healed. Because long before the betrayal, long before the lawsuits and the shocking exits, Count's Customs was not a business. It was Danny's sanctuary. Danny Koker's rise wasn't built on fame. It was built on roots, deep, gritty, Detroit roots. He grew up surrounded by the rumble of engines and the harmony of gospel music. Born in Cleveland and raised in the industrial heart of Detroit, his childhood was shaped by 2 forces, faith and horsepower. His father, Danny Koker Sr., lived a double life: gospel legend on stage, and a grease-covered mechanic in the garage. When he wasn't touring with the Cathedral Quartet, he was standing over an engine block, teaching his son the sacred craft of bringing dead machines back to life. By the time Danny hit his teens, while other kids were wasting their nights on video games, he was rebuilding carbs, grinding metal, and studying the soul of every car he touched. Vegas became his next chapter, a city of neon lights, late-night chaos, and second chances. He became Count Coolrider, a rock and roll vampire hosting late-night horror shows. It was weird, wild, and unforgettable. But more importantly, it gave him a dedicated cult following and his first taste of television. That small doorway opened into something much bigger. What started as a private garage for his personal collection grew into Count's Customs, Denise temple of steel and chrome. His builds were unique. Detroit discipline mixed with Vegas attitude. Word spread fast. Celebrities came. Collectors lined up. Fans chased him. And eventually, the History Channel took notice. Through his appearances on Pawn Stars, Danny became the charismatic car whisperer everyone loved. And in 2012, he was handed the opportunity that would change everything. Counting Cars, a show built around real pressure, real craftsmanship, and real brotherhood. Count's Customs wasn't just a workplace, it was family. Or at least, that's what it used to be. But fame is a dangerous fuel. It burns hot, burns fast, and blinds people. As Danny's empire grew bigger, cracks began forming behind the walls. Some crew members couldn't handle the pressure. Others got drunk on fame. A few started chasing money over loyalty. And then, there were those who crossed lines Danny never thought anyone in his shop would dare cross. Among them, one betrayal cut deeper than every argument, every disagreement, every broken trust combined, because it didn't come from a mechanic, or a painter, or a designer trying to steal credit. That came from the man no one ever suspected. The man who wasn't even on camera, the man Danny trusted with the pulse of the entire business. Joseph Frontiera. He wasn't the face of the shop. He wasn't the hands that built the masterpieces. He was the bookkeeper, the one who saw every number, every invoice, every secret that kept Count's Customs alive. He held the keys to Danny's entire empire, and he used that access to betray everything Danny had built. Danny's faith in his team had always been unshakable. For years, that trust felt bulletproof, protected by loyalty, brotherhood, and the belief that everyone under his roof lived by the same code. But in 2016, that foundation exploded beneath him. What started as a routine financial review turned into the kind of nightmare that shakes a man to his core. Court documents filed in Las Vegas revealed a truth so shocking that even the closest members of Count's Customs struggled to process it. Joseph Frontiera, the quiet bookkeeper trusted with the company's heart, had been secretly siphoning money over $75,000 straight out of Danny's pockets. And these weren't vague accusations. They were painfully clear. Joseph had allegedly used Count's Customs funds to make a down payment on a Range Rover, buy airline tickets, pay off personal expenses, and even forge Danny's signature on official documents. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't oversight. It was a premeditated plan, a calculated betrayal. And for a man like Danny, who had built his entire life around honesty, craftsmanship, and loyalty, the wound went far deeper than any financial hit ever could. Because Count's Customs wasn't just a shop, it was his family, a place built on late nights, trust, and shared sweat. Danny believed every person in that building was part of something sacred. So when he discovered that someone had used that sacred bond as a weapon, the betrayal felt like a punch to the chest. It wasn't about the money, One insider later said, "It was about what the money represented: broken loyalty." But Danny didn't just confront the traitor. He went bigger. He filed suit not only against Joseph, but also against Randstad USA, the staffing agency that had placed him in the shop, accusing them of negligence for failing to uncover his past issues before sending him to Counts Customs. The case went public, and the media storm erupted immediately. To fans who saw Danny as the unbreakable leader of a brotherhood, the scandal felt unreal. A place built on trust had been quietly burning behind the scenes. When Counting Cars returned to History Channel, Joseph was simply gone. No farewell, no final episode, no explanation, not even a name mentioned on screen. Danny never spoke about him again. Off camera, Joseph vanished, deleted social media, left Las Vegas, and disappeared from public life entirely. It was as though he had never existed, except for the damage he left behind. In the rubble of that betrayal, Danny rebuilt his entire system. The easygoing, open-door, family-style atmosphere of Counts Customs became something more controlled, more guarded. Contracts replaced handshakes. Background checks replaced blind trust. Every dollar was accounted for, every invoice examined twice. Danny became more private, more cautious, more reluctant to trust new faces. The theft didn't sink Counts Customs, but it changed its heartbeat. The garage that once echoed with laughter and loyalty now carried a quiet tension, a reminder that even the tightest families can fracture. And for Danny Koker, that betrayal didn't just cost $75. That cost him a piece of his belief in people. Scott Jones was different from the rest of the crew. If Joseph Frontiera represented betrayal, then Scott Jones represented slow-burning conflict, the kind that doesn't explode overnight, but eats away at trust, one argument, one disagreement, one tense meeting at a time. When Counting Cars first hit television screens, Scott was one of the earliest and most unforgettable faces. He wasn't the mechanic with grease on his hands, or the painter laying down flawless candy colors, or the jokester cracking laughs between builds. He was the enforcer, the man who stood between Danny Koker's artistic chaos and the financial reality of keeping a garage alive. As the original shop manager and bookkeeper in the first 2 seasons, Scott's role wasn't glamorous, but it was essential. Danny dreamed. Scott calculated. Danny saw possibilities. Scott saw numbers. And in a place like Counts Customs, where imagination fueled every build, Scott became the brick wall that every wild idea eventually smashed into. From the beginning, their dynamic was electric. Danny, the visionary, could look at a rusted-out Camaro carcass and picture a roaring masterpiece. Scott, the realist, saw the invoices, the blown budgets, the overtime hours, and the parts orders nobody wanted to sign for. Their personalities clashed like gasoline and fire. Danny lived off passion. Scott lived off precision. Danny wanted to create. Scott wanted to control the cost of creating. And while that tension made for great television, behind the cameras, it was draining everyone in the shop. Scott's world was structure, discipline, and accountability. He didn't care about being funny for the fans. He didn't care about the show's fame or the family-style culture Danny worked so hard to protect. He was there to keep the business breathing, and in a garage full of artists, his rigid approach made him the constant pressure point no one could ignore. His seriousness, his sharp tone, and his refusal to bend for TV magic eventually made him a storm cloud hovering over the shop. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't malicious. But he was relentless. And relentless doesn't mix well with creativity. By the end of season 2, the cracks were visible from every corner of the shop. The tension wasn't just between Scott and Danny, it spread through the team like smoke. And then, one day, without warning, Scott was gone. No goodbye episode. No explanation. No on-screen tribute. Nothing. The man who once kept Counts Customs in line vanished from the Counting Cars universe as if he had never existed. Fans immediately launched theories. Some accused him of mismanaging money. Others believed he had finally clashed one time too many with Danny or the network producers. But the truth, according to later reports, was far quieter and far more human. Scott Jones walked away to be closer to his family in Tennessee. No drama. No scandal. No lawsuits. Just a man exhausted by the hidden pressure of being the shop's backbone and the network's invisible villain. He wanted peace, the kind no camera could ever offer. And for a shop built on passion and personality, his quiet disappearance closed the chapter on one of Counts Customs' most complicated figures. In time, Scott found the peace he had been searching for. He opened his own small but respected shop, Koker's Extreme Automotive, tucked away in the quiet hills of Roan Mountain, Tennessee. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't noisy, and it wasn't filled with TV cameras. And that was exactly why Scott chose it. The man who once wrestled with budgets, deadlines, and on-camera pressure now spent his days doing what he loved without the weight of an empire on his back. In 2021, he even made a brief appearance on Netflix's Swap Shop, a reminder that while he had walked away from the chaos of Counting Cars, his love for engines, metal, and craftsmanship never faded. Scott didn't betray the shop, didn't lie, didn't steal, but his departure cut deep in a different way. It was the first true fracture in a team that had once felt unbreakable. When he left, It wasn't just a man walking out of a job. It was the balance of the entire garage shifting beneath Danny Koker's feet. The enforcer was gone, and with him went the structure that kept the creative storm under control. Suddenly Danny wasn't just the visionary, he was the accountant, the leader, the problem solver, and the peacemaker all at once. For the first time, Count's Customs stopped feeling like a tight brotherhood and began feeling like a growing brand. Heavier, busier, and harder to hold together. And the weight of that transformation rested squarely on Danny's shoulders. If Scott's disappearance was the first crack, Rolly Rock'n'Rolly Sabo's exit was the moment fans felt the break. Rolly was pure electricity in human form. His thick Hungarian accent, unpredictable humor, and explosive energy lit up every corner of the shop. The man could turn polishing chrome into comedy and turn a stressful deadline into a moment of laughter. As the shop's lead detailer, his talent was undeniable. Every car that rolled out of Count's Customs carried a piece of his perfection. Yet in 2017, he disappeared without a word. One day Rolly was cracking jokes behind a '68 Mustang. The next day he was simply gone. No farewell episode, no explanation, no tribute, only silence. Fans flooded Facebook, Instagram, and internet forums, desperate to know what happened. Then a bizarre report surfaced. Rolly's trailer, packed with thousands of dollars in detailing tools, had been stolen in Las Vegas. He posted briefly about it, his words filled with heartbreak and frustration, then went silent again. Rumors exploded. Some said he left because of the theft. Others whispered about tensions inside the shop. A few even speculated he had been blamed for missing equipment, though nothing was ever proven. The truth remained hidden behind locked doors. What was known was that Rolly resurfaced later with his own business, Rock'n'Rolly Custom Detailing, still operating in Las Vegas. But his absence from Count's Customs was a wound the show never fully recovered from. Rolly wasn't just a worker, he was part of the soul, the noise, the humor, the heart. Without him, the shop felt quieter, heavier, and a little less alive. Danny never publicly explained why Rolly left, and in that silence, fans understood everything. Counting cars wasn't scripted. It wasn't staged. It was real people with real emotions, and sometimes, real heartbreak. If Rolly was the laughter, then Shannon Icar was the calm, the quiet master whose work defined Count's Customs for over 2 decades. As the shop's lead motorcycle builder, Shannon didn't need the spotlight. He didn't need to crack jokes or chase fame. His art spoke for him. His hands transformed metal into poetry, building bikes that fans argued were some of the finest ever seen on television. In the loudest garage on TV, Shannon was the still point in the storm, the man who anchored the chaos with experience, patience, and a monk-like focus. And yet, just like Rolly, just like Scott, Shannon vanished. One season he was shaping handlebars and fine-tuning custom frames. The next season his workspace was empty. No announcement, no explanation, no goodbye. For fans, it was the most painful disappearance yet, because Shannon wasn't just part of the team. He was the beating heart of the motorcycle division, a presence so constant that losing him felt like losing the foundation of the shop. And for Danny, Shannon's exit wasn't business. It was personal. Shannon had been with him for over 20 years. He wasn't an employee, he was family. His departure carved a silence into the shop that even the roar of engines couldn't fill. And although neither man ever spoke publicly about what happened, the absence said everything. The stronger the team had once been, the deeper the cracks that were now beginning to show. He was meticulous, creative, and loyal in a way that only true craftsmen understand. Every motorcycle Shannon touched carried a piece of his soul. The precision of a surgeon, the imagination of an artist, and the quiet pride of a man who never needed applause to validate his work. For years, he stood as the backbone of Count's Customs, building machines that didn't just ride, they lived. And while the cameras focused on drama, humor, and TV moments, his hands were busy shaping masterpieces that defined the true spirit of the shop. But as the series expanded and production leaned further into made-for-TV tension, something in Shannon began to shift. The show he once joined for the love of the craft slowly transformed into something else. Louder, flashier, and less about the work he devoted his life to perfecting. By season 7, the camera drifted from him. By season 8, he was gone. No farewell episode, no explanation, no final build to honor his legacy. Just silence. The kind of silence that only comes when a man quietly chooses dignity over spotlight. Today he still works in Las Vegas, shaping custom bikes the only way he knows how, with discipline, focus, and a deep respect for the metal beneath his hands. His story wasn't a scandal, it was a quiet heartbreak. The story of a craftsman who outgrew the circus around him. But if Shannon represented discipline, Mike Henry, Horny Mike, represented pure Vegas chaos wrapped in talent. His horned helmet, neon spikes, and wild laugh made him impossible to forget. He was the spark in the shop, the unpredictable jolt that turned ordinary projects into works of art. Yet beneath the eccentric persona was a genuinely gifted airbrush artist, one who poured passion into every stroke of fire, skull, and chrome illusion. For years, he and Danny worked like flame and fuel, sometimes explosive, sometimes brilliant, but always pushing each other higher. Over time, The boundaries of television tightened around them. Art doesn't follow shooting schedules, and creativity can't be forced into episode deadlines. Mike felt the weight of that cage. He wanted freedom, room to experiment, space to build his own artistic empire. And quietly, gradually, he stepped away. No anger, no conflict, just evolution, an artist needing more sky than a TV show could offer. Today, Horny Mike Designs has become his sanctuary, and while he occasionally returns to Count's Customs, his path has become wider than the show could ever contain. For Danny, each departure, Frontier, Scott, Rowley, Shannon, Mike carved its own scar. Betrayal, burnout, theft, frustration, ambition. Each man left behind a different kind of silence. And inside the walls of Count's Customs, those silences still echo. The garage continues to roar, engines still thunder, and the brand Danny built remains a powerhouse. But something intangible has changed. The laughter is softer, the circle is smaller, and the weight of leadership grows heavier with each goodbye. Danny learned the hardest truth of success. Not everyone who starts the journey is meant to finish it with you. But every person leaves a mark, good or bad, on the dream you're trying to protect. So now the question passes to the viewers who rode through the chaos with them. Who was your favorite member of the Counting Cars crew? Which departure hit you the hardest? Tell us in the comments. Your voice keeps these stories alive. And before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another untold story from the world behind the cameras.